briefing from the core, the crew operations resource engineer, and they will deliver important information like updated anticipated splashdown and loss of signal times to the crew, as well as the wave height and wind speed. So we'll be standing by to listen in on those. Like I said, that will happen shortly after, typically after trunk separation. I can't quite remember if it's before or after deorbit burn. It must be before. But in any case, we'll be hearing all of that coming from core. In fact, that individual is seated there in the room on your screen. That is SpaceX Mission Control in Hawthorne, California. That room is located just over our shoulders, and that is where Dragon operators are standing by on console, monitoring the progress of Dragon as it continues its way home. It's been, at the point of splashdown, it'll be about 17 hours since Dragon undocked from the International Space Station. The team there in mission control, there are multiple teams, in fact, and they cycle through shifts to ensure that everybody gets the required rest and sleep periods, just like the astronauts on board. That crew operations and resource engineer is seated there in the room, and that, like Sandra said, is the primary voice that we will be hearing communicate from the SpaceX team to the crew on board.
That's right. And so it looks like we're about 3 minutes or so from the claw separation portion of today's flight. The claw is a portion on the spacecraft that holds the trunk to Dragon. Following claw separation, we're going to jettison or remove that trunk because it's no longer needed. The trunk has solar arrays on it that provides power to the Dragon spacecraft. But now that we're beginning the reentry process, we need to go ahead and jettison that trunk and able to expose the heat shield, which is really going to do the heavy lifting as Crew 9 re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. They come in at 17,500 miles per hour, so they really need to ensure that that heat shield absorbs that heat, and there's...
Deorbit sequence start.
And so we did just get communications there that the deorbit sequence start has begun. So here in just a couple minutes from now, we expect to hear information or a call back about the claw separation having begun. And again, that kicks off that trunk separation portion that I was discussing to remove that, expose the heat shield, and then eventually we'll have the deorbit burn. And we'll continue to walk you through all of these milestones as we approach them ahead of our splashdown at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time this afternoon, off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida.
Yeah, we're very excited to bring the Crew 9 crew home. Sandra, we were talking about the trunk separation. That trunk is on a trajectory that will re-enter in the atmosphere and break up upon that re-entry. The heat shield itself is one of my favorite parts of the Dragon capsule. It is the workhorse of the re-entry phase. It will work to protect the Dragon capsule and the crew members on board during the re-entry phase as the temperatures outside of the capsule build up to, I believe, about 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit in excess of. And meanwhile, the interior of Dragon stays a very comfortable temperature. That heat shield does a lot of the work, and we'll see that plasma build up on the exterior of the capsule. As a result of the plasma that builds up, we will lose communications with the crew. This is known as loss of signal, or LOS. This is roughly a 10-minute period on average, even less than. I believe today it is probably about 6 or 7 minutes long. It kind of depends on the mission, and it happens for every Dragon capsule that re-enters the atmosphere. Due to that plasma buildup, we're not able to communicate or command the capsule, so we stand by while we wait to regain communication after we pass through that period of loss of signal and get what's known as AOS, or acquisition of signal.
Continuing to stand by for claw separation, and then we'll look towards trunk separation. It'll be just about a minute or so after that. That happens pretty rapidly in succession. Some of our milestones will take a little bit longer throughout the day. For example, we will have a deorbit burn after that will take about 7.5 minutes and helps get Dragon set up in the right trajectory to splash down in the Gulf off the coast of Florida. So continuing to stand by for claw separation.
Nominal trunk jettison.
All right. Great news there. That trunk has been jettisoned from the Dragon capsule. So the claw was separated. That's the mechanism that connects the telemetry and power between the Dragon capsule and the trunk. In order to expose the heat shield underneath Dragon, we had to jettison that trunk, and so we just got confirmation that that has happened. So that is great news. Basically means that telemetry is looking good and that the nitrox system is primed for cabin and suit cooling, and the heat shield, like I said, is now exposed and ready for atmospheric reentry. The trunk served its purpose by gathering energy from the sun through its solar cells and converting that to battery power. Since we separated the trunk, we can't generate any more new power, but we really don't need to since we're coming home and Dragon has enough battery power already stored. Now, up next, the final steps that Dragon will perform prior to reentry: the slew, or the maneuver to deorbit burn attitude, and then the deorbit burn itself. This deorbit burn is the last time that the forward Dracos, which are the 4 thrusters located on top of the spacecraft under the nose cone, it's the last time that they will ignite. The deorbit burn will place Dragon on a precise trajectory to return to the splashdown zone off the coast of Florida, off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida, and that will last about 7.5 minutes once it starts.
And so deorbit burn is targeted for 2:11 p.m. Central Time, so about 2 minutes from now. As we mentioned, it's going to last about 7.5 minutes, again, helping to get Dragon into the precise trajectory to ensure that splashdown occurs in the area that was calculated and where the recovery team is already in place, ready to support splashdown operations today. The recovery vessel Megan is the ship that is going to be utilized today, and we also have what is called fast boats that go out first to check the spacecraft and make sure everything is looking good before the recovery vessel Megan approaches. So that whole recovery process takes about an hour, I would say, from the time the crew splashes down to the time they're on the boat and the crew gets out of the capsule. And we'll continue to bring you live coverage through every step of the way today as Crew 9 returns home.
Indeed. Now, let's take a little bit of a closer look at Dragon. One of the great things about being close to the space station is that we can use space station cameras to look at Dragon, but now that Dragon is on its way home, we don't have those external cameras. So here's an animation of what the capsule looks like. We've got the pressurized section, the capsule on the top, and the trunk, or the unpressurized section, on the bottom. That's where those solar panels that we manufacture in-house are located, soaking up the energy from the sun and turning it into power for the capsule. At the very top of the capsule is the nose cone. That is where the Dracos, the forward Dracos, are located. That nose cone is currently open, not closed like we saw in that animation. Once we get through the final maneuverings for the re-entry phase, we will close the nose cone capsule just before Dragon begins its atmospheric entry to protect that forward hatch there located along with those forward Dracos. So go ahead.
Oh, that's right. I was going to mention that the nose cone does open shortly after launch, and it remains open the entire time that Dragon is docked to the International Space Station. So as an example for this particular spacecraft, Freedom, since September when it docked to the International Space Station, remains open that entire time, and here shortly it will close for the very first time since September.
So quick recap of what Dragon has done in recent history here. We basically began preparations for re-entry known as the deorbit sequence. So Dragon released the trunk. As we said before, we separated the claw, we released the trunk. It next will slew to the deorbit burn attitude. Slew basically meaning maneuver, so it will position itself correctly to execute that deorbit burn. We want the heat shield side to be facing forward, or first, if you will. We want that to be the leading edge of the Dragon capsule, as that heat shield is meant to basically be an ablative material for the heat that it will incur. Once we complete that deorbit burn attitude slew, we will initiate the deorbit burn itself. That will last for several minutes, expecting that to be to start here any moment now, actually, and then it will go until about 2:18 p.m. Pacific time or 5:18 p.m. Eastern time.
And I did hear confirmation that deorbit burn is underway. As we mentioned, it's about a 7.5-minute burn. So within the last 10 minutes, Dragon has jettisoned its trunk and initiated the deorbit burn just seconds ago. As mentioned earlier, for those operations, NASA and SpaceX closely coordinate with the United States Coast Guard to establish a safety zone to ensure public safety and for the safety of those involved in the recovery operations, as well as the crew on board the returning spacecraft. Multiple notices are issued to the mariners in advance of and during recovery operations, and Coast Guard patrol boats are deployed to discourage boaters from entering the spacecraft, the splashdown zones. So we do want to stress to the public the need to respect this safety zone. Recovering a spacecraft from the water is a hazardous operation, and any other boats interfering increases the risk to not only the astronauts in Dragon, but the teams working to recover them from the water and the safety of those that may come too close. So for the safety of the crew, which you see there on your screen, your safety, we recommend you sit back and watch as we'll continue to bring you the best possible views of our astronauts' homecoming.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, this deorbit burn is the last time that we will utilize our 4 forward Draco thrusters. Forward basically meaning at the top of the Dragon capsule. Dragon Freedom has not yet entered the Earth's atmosphere. This deorbit burn is what will line the vehicle up and put it on its final trajectory to the landing site right off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida. So basically, it is the last burn that the Dragon spacecraft executes and is what really locks it in for that precise landing. As you can see on your screen right now, Nick, Suni, Butch, and Alexander are using their screens to keep tabs on the burn duration, the Draco firings, and trajectory details such as entry angle, spacecraft perigee, and how much distance remains until deorbit burn termination. As I mentioned earlier, Dragon is flying itself. So all the crew has to do is stay strapped into their seats and keep tabs on things. Although I must say, if I had one of those window seats, it would be pretty difficult to restrain myself. Now, with Nick, Suni, Butch, and Alexander ready to deorbit and splash down back on Earth, they will be heading to one of 8 targeted sites supported by SpaceX and NASA. All of these sites are located off the coast of Florida, either in the Gulf of America or the Atlantic Ocean. Spreading the supported sites across multiple locations helps maximize the return opportunities for this mission and future crews, lowering the chance that we'll have to wave off due to bad weather. For those of you following along, you'll know that today's splashdown marks our final Dragon recovery on the East Coast after 6 great years of successful.
All right, as you listen there and you see Suni and Butch right there on your screen in the capsule making their way back here to Earth. We want to get a report now coming directly from Florida at the Kennedy Space Center. We want to head over to our partners at Fox 35 down there to give us an update. Esther, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining our coverage here. How are things down there at the Kennedy Space Center?
Absolutely. Great to be with you. I can tell you it really feels like the whole world is going to be watching this splashdown because the entire world's been waiting months, and then more months for Suni and Butch to safely come back home. So the time we are watching very closely, as I know you guys are too, is that 5:57 splashdown off the coast of Florida. But this mission started about 10 months ago right here at KSC, right behind me actually at Launch Complex 40 2041, but the mission quickly had unexpected problems pop up, and so we want to break down just exactly how we got here. Suni and Butch strapped into the Boeing Starliner capsule back on June 5th, and they were supposed to go up for an anticipated test flight. Now, that capsule launched with problems early on. There were some leaks that NASA knew about, but they thought they could manage them. However, when the capsule docked at the ISS, they quickly realized there were additional problems, and NASA said it was not safe for Suni and Butch to come home on. Now, fast forward about 10 months, Crew 10 has successfully docked at the International Space Station, and this is paving the way for Suni and Butch and the rest of Crew 9 to finally end their mission.
The heart actually can shrink in zero gravity and pump less efficiently. So reacting to coming back to Earth and dealing with that with dizziness and lightheadedness. We know some astronauts have actually had their vision improve or worsen, depending on how their eyesight was before they went up.
And take a look at this map that NASA just shared on social media. It shows the exact path the capsule is going to take re-entering Earth and splashing down off the coast of Florida, if you do want to try and look out for it. And as soon as the astronauts are safely recovered from the ocean, they will receive a medical evaluation to make sure they are doing okay after the flight. So we are following that 5:57 splashdown time closely, and we're told after splashdown happens, it will take about 1 hour for the capsule to reach the boat and for the astronauts to then get onto the boat. So keep that in mind. Now, if everything does go as planned, we're going to hear from NASA around 7:30 Florida time, 6:30 your time, with the full breakdown of this 8-day mission that turned into nearly 10 months and is now almost fully over. But we'll send things back to you.
Esther, before we let you go, really quickly here, do we have a sense of a timeline, right? They splash down, the boat goes out there, and there's about an hour you mentioned where they kind of collect the astronauts and bring them back, but they don't get to see their family immediately, right? Do they have to go through any tests to make sure they're still healthy or anything?
Absolutely. I think that they're going to be watched very closely by NASA just to be up in space for about 10 months. So we do know those medical watches, those are pretty protocol. And so, yeah, they're not going to get to hug their family quite yet, snuggle their pups. We know that Suni has some dogs that she can't wait to see, but just readjusting back to gravity, you know, learning how to walk, really seeing any kind of muscle bone loss that they might have dealt with, as well as changes to their eyes. Those are all things that NASA is going to be keeping close tabs on after they successfully splash down.
Yeah, and can you speak to Suni and Butch's attitude over the last couple of months? I mean, 10 months is a long time, right? For us, I know, like, man, I wish that, I wish that would have never happened to them. But, they've been really optimistic through all of this. Right.
Oh my gosh, Suni and Butch have been they have never wavered. They said, yes, we knew we were going up here for this 8-day test flight, but we've trained to be up there for months and months and months. So just this, commitment to the mission that they've had from day one, it really has never changed. And now recently we heard from them and they said it's a little bit bittersweet because they are not sure if they're ever going to get to go to space after this. So I think they've really savored. It's like 280 something days in space doing science, doing tests, just really taking in the sights from the International Space Station. So absolutely, this duo has really captured everyone's hearts, and now the world just wants to see them make it back home safely to their families very, very soon.
Oh man, do they have a story to tell. All right, Esther, thank you so much. We'll be watching closely. Thank you.
Awesome. Talk to you soon.
Oh, that's good stuff, man. I really feel good for both Suni and Butch because, man, it's been a long 9-10 months, that it's been. So it's going to be great to have them home. Remember, this is a 17-hour trip from the time they left the ISS, making their way back here to Earth, with splashdown expected to happen off the Florida coast there in Tallahassee, more specifically. Now, Esther was talking about some of the numbers there. Suni and Butch, they spent a total of 286 days in orbit out there in space. Also on the ISS, it was 285 days. And if you're wondering how many orbits did they get around the Earth during that 10-month time frame, well, they had 4,576 laps around the Earth while they were there for that time span. And if you put that in mileage, It is 121,347,491 miles. So we're looking at some video here of the 4 astronauts that have since replaced them on the ISS. 2 of the astronauts that went up there to replace them are from America. The other 2 are cosmonauts. So it's going to be fun to have Suni and Butch back up there, but the work continues as those astronauts have since replaced them, and they're going to be continuing the work that is necessary there in space. All right, let's get another look back and listen in one more time to Mission Control. Mission Control has been guiding Suni and Butch back here, and again, splashdown is happening in about 40 minutes or so, a little less than 40 minutes. Here we go. Mission Control. Let's listen in.
The Crew 9 crew a little bit earlier than expected, because we in the past have actually regained communications a couple minutes earlier than initially anticipated. So we'll go through that period of loss of signal, that entry period, that specifically when the Dragon spacecraft is re-entering through the atmosphere, approximately at about 18,000 feet, when the capsule is traveling at 350 miles per hour. We will see our first views of parachutes for the day. It's one of my favorite moments of return sequences, is when we get to see the drogue parachutes. We'll see the drogues come out. Those drogues will help slow the vehicle down to about 119 miles per hour. And then that is when the main parachutes will come out from the Dragon spacecraft, and then ultimately end in splashdown.
And we are hearing confirmation that the nose cone is closed and everything was nominal or as expected with that closure. So as we begin the second half of entry, Dragon is now beginning to inject cooled nitrox into the air being delivered to the spacesuits worn by Nick, Suni, Butch, and Alexander. Again, this is what will allow the crew to remain comfortable while external temperatures reach 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit as they re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. So the heat shield is pointing forward, leading Dragon to the landing site.
Yeah. Now, speaking of the heat shield, Dragon's primary heat shield is comprised of PICA 3.0, which stands for Phenolic Impregnated Carbon Ablator. The first-gen PICA was initially developed by NASA for studying and sampling comets within our solar system.
SpaceX partnered with NASA to develop PICA X, which was the second-generation product used on all Dragon 1 cargo resupply service missions that resupplied the International Space Station on 20 missions. PICA 3.0 was developed specifically for use on Dragon 2 crew and cargo, with enhanced structural and thermal capabilities that allowed the heat shield to be even more effective in the way that it utilized the ability to make that heat ablevate as it goes through the Earth's atmosphere.
The remainder of Dragon is composed primarily of a SpaceX proprietary ablative material. It's another class of thermal protection which is lighter weight versus PICA and protects the underlying composite structure during reentry to ensure the structural capabilities are maintained.
While Dragon will experience temperatures well over 3,000 degrees during peak reentry conditions, the characteristics of the thermal protection system, coupled with the environmental control and life support system in the pressurized interior, will ensure that Nick, Suni, Butch, and Alexander stay cool and comfortable during all phases of reentry through splashdown.
Now, if you've just recently joined us, we hope to regain views of our crew members inside Dragon Freedom, but we don't have those available at the moment due to ground station coverage. So we will bring those back to you as soon as we can. Now, after Dragon Freedom has re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, a series of parachutes will deploy to slow the crew's descent. First will be the 2 drogue parachutes, followed by the 4 main parachutes, and those will guide Dragon to its first contact with Earth since it launched back in September. Dragon will automatically deploy these parachutes when different pressure and positioning sensors on the spacecraft detect that they're at the right speed and altitude.
Vehicle velocity at drogue deploy is approximately 350 miles per hour, and they deploy at about 18,000 feet. Now, when the vehicle velocity at main deploy is approximately 119 miles per hour, and they deploy at about 6,500 feet. When Dragon splashes down in the water, the vehicle velocity will be about 16 miles per hour, so you can really see how those parachutes help to slow down the crew inside the capsule. The highest G-load the crew is expected to experience today is about 3 to 5 Gs.
Yeah, when you think about really fun roller coasters, they're about in that range. So I'm sure that our crew on board will be well equipped to experience those Gs.
All right, you're taking a live look at Mission Control and listening in to the play-by-play as the crew, Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore, on that Dragon capsule, making their way back here to Earth on this 17-hour flight. Of course, weather is a very important part of a mission like this. So meteorologist Misha Shea joining us now for a look at the conditions down there off the coast of Tallahassee.
Well, of course, NASA, of course, SpaceX, they have a lot of very, very intelligent meteorologists working for them. They're monitoring things closely. I'm monitoring it here, and they actually said that they have several sites that they had picked out beforehand just in case the weather did something unexpected. But right now it looks like they have chosen the location of being right off of the coast of Florida, more specifically Tallahassee, Florida. And it looks as though that is a good choice because we've got a big sprawling area of high pressure basically sitting between Tallahassee, Jacksonville, Florida, and the Tampa, Florida area. So it's basically going to be very quiet. Of course, with high pressure, you've got lots of sinking air. So that means you're not going to be able to have that rising air, cool, condense, form the clouds, form the rain, form the storms, the strong winds that could really have some very negative impacts on this splashdown. So that is the good news. They've chosen a great location. Weather is super quiet. You can see temperatures all across Florida in the 70s. So the splashdown is projected to be right off of the coast of Tallahassee, Florida. And right now they're picking up light winds out of the south. You can see out over the Gulf. It is very quiet. Like I said, with high pressure, you're not going to have a ton of action going on. That high sliding just to the east of Tallahassee, Florida. So that's why we have the light southerly flow at this point. So I'm not really seeing anything with weather that would impact the splashdown and have any negative consequences for those astronauts coming back. I'm sure they don't want any problems. They're ready to get back, maybe have a nice steak dinner. I don't know if their body can handle that just yet, but with all of the restrictions that they've had, but yeah, they need a break and they deserve a round of applause.
Oh man, do they ever. That's good news. And you know, the reason we talk about weather so much is because there was a crew on Crew 9, 4 astronauts that were last week. They were scheduled to leave on Wednesday, but weather played a role there. So they had to delay that launch until Friday. And now here we are, hopefully here pretty soon, Suni and Butch will be splashing back down here on Earth. So weather plays a very big role in this.
A very big role. And you know, when you have a spacecraft entering back into the atmosphere, there are so many things that could potentially go wrong. So you don't want weather to play a part in something going wrong. So that's why they're going through their checklist, making sure that everything looks good. I heard the crew talking about it and going, you know, through that checklist. And like I said, making sure that things are looking fine. They're not really picking up on any problems because, of course, when you're re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, there's a lot going on. So it's a dangerous thing, and we hope that they do make it back safely. But from what I'm hearing, it sounds like everything is going very smoothly.
No, we're doing
so
good.
far.
Yeah, we're doing very good. Ramisha, thank you so much. All right, you guys, here's another look at Mission Control. And as we're talking about that re-entry process, as we get closer and closer to Butch and Suni making their way back here to Earth, one of the things that I thought was incredible is as you re-enter, the capsule itself, it has a heat shield that is protecting Butch and Suni, because that capsule could reach anywhere between 3,000 or north of 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So that heat shield is one of the most important parts of this capsule as it re-enters here. So this is going to be a very joyous occasion here pretty soon. Splashdown is scheduled to be at 5:57 Eastern time, so that's 4:57 for us here. So we are about 27 minutes or so away from seeing Butch and Suni splash down off the coast of Tallahassee. As Misha mentioned, the weather conditions are favorable. The teams are there in the water as well. The recovery team is in place in the water, ready to receive them. And once they splash down in the water, they're going to take about an hour to kind of triage everything and get Butch and Suni out of the capsule, and then they'll be going to get some tests done as well. But overall, everyone is just really happy to see them get back here, because it's been a very long stint on this. Is something that was not supposed to take this long, but they have been very optimistic from day one. Their spirits remain high, and I'm sure they'll be even higher when they get back home here to see their family. All right, let's get back to Mission Control. Right here, as a matter of fact, I should say in California is Mission Control. So let's take another listen in as they are working with Suni and Butch to keep that capsule on track here, as it will eventually splash down at 4:57 our time
this afternoon off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida.
So all good news there as Dragon continues to make its way home with the Crew 9 crew. As we've mentioned before, we are splashing down on the Gulf Coast. We have ability to splash down on either side of Florida, but the location site just outside of Tallahassee, Florida is the site that was selected today due to best recovery conditions. And as Sandra mentioned before, weather is always a watch item, but everything is looking great for that particular recovery location. So I'm sure once we start getting views from the recovery vessel, I have a feeling it's going to be a pretty beautiful afternoon.
And we did mention that, of course, this is a daylight splashdown, so we should be getting some great views. We do have a couple of spacecraft called the WB-57, which are high-altitude planes that NASA utilizes during splashdown operations. Those are en route and going to be tracking the capsule as it makes its way through the atmosphere, and should be providing some good views for us. Kate and I were just chatting about how we haven't had a daytime splashdown in a little while, so we're looking forward to the views along with you.
Yeah. Nighttime views are also great because we can see that capsule streaking through the night sky quite brightly. So like Sandra, you said earlier, daylight will be a little bit less bright, but we will definitely be able to see the SpaceX recovery team operations much clearer. I could also imagine it's probably a little bit easier for the team themselves to do their work in daytime than at nighttime. We'll see them rush in really quickly with a couple of fast boats as they begin the initial safety checks and sweeps of the Dragon capsule, while also retrieving the parachutes from the surface of the ocean. The recovery vessel, the main recovery vessel, will continue to make its way closer to the Dragon capsule. It is stationed a couple miles away from the actual recovery location, the splashdown location, for obvious safety purposes. So it takes a little while for that vessel to make its way over, but once it's closer, we'll have even better views of those recovery operations.
And you may be wondering why sometimes we splash down in the daytime versus the nighttime. And believe me, we would all love for these operations to happen during regular daytime working hours. But unfortunately, orbital mechanics just doesn't quite work out that way. So it has to deal with the location of the International Space Station, as well as where the splashdown zone is on Earth and that trajectory, as well as the phasing. So as we mentioned earlier, sometimes we have phasing as short as 6 hours, sometimes in excess of 30 plus hours. It just depends on where the targeted area is that the capsule is going to splash down. So today's phasing has been 17 hours since undocking occurred at 10:05 p.m. Pacific yesterday evening for us here in Hawthorne. Early wee hours for folks on the East Coast and other areas of the United States.
Yeah, but regardless of whether it's daytime or nighttime, the SpaceX recovery team has trained and practiced and rehearsed for it all. So regardless of daylight, They are really efficient with those operations. And but like you said, Sandra, it has been a minute since we have seen a daytime splashdown on a NASA SpaceX crew mission. The last daytime recovery was on Crew 4, which was the debut flight for the capsule flying today, the spacecraft known as Dragon Freedom. And so, yeah, kind of a fun fact there in terms of the timing of that daylight splashdowns. Once again, standing by for more communication with the crew. The next event that we have coming up is the start of that period known as loss of signal. That is the period still expected at 2:44 p.m. Pacific time. This lasts for several minutes while the capsule is making its way through the Earth's atmosphere. The heat shield located at the bottom of the capsule really doing all the work at that point in time in terms of using the atmosphere to slow the capsule down from its orbital speeds of 17,500 miles per hour.
Our tablets are secure, restraints are tightened, visors down. We are configured for entry.
Freedom, I copied. Tablets are secured, restraints are tight, and visors down.
All right, great news there in terms of continuing to make progress. That back and forth communication we heard was just letting Core know that per their instructions, Crew 9 has now put away everything that was necessary in order to begin the re-entry, including those tablets that were located on their legs. Those are now stowed away. They've tightened that safety harness that we see there, and the visors are now down. So with all that being said, let's take a minute to meet our returning crew. U.S. Space Force Colonel Nick Hague is your Crew 9 commander. He was selected by NASA as an astronaut in 2013. This was his second spaceflight to the International Space Station and third launch overall. He spent 171 days in space with Crew 9 and has a career total of 374 days in space. During his mission, he completed a spacewalk with astronaut Suni Williams. That was his fourth spacewalk, earning him a career total of 25 hours, 56 minutes of spacewalking time. Before Crew 9, Hague previously served as a crew member of Expedition 59 and 60 back in 2019. He flew with Alexei Ovchinin and NASA's Christina Cook. So this is his second time sharing the space station with Ovchinin. The Kansas native is a test pilot and distinguished graduate of the United States Air Force Academy. Nick spent 5 months in Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. He voluntarily transferred from the United States Air Force to U.S. Space Force in 2021 and is an active colonel. His wife, Katie, is a retired U.S. Air Force colonel, and they have 2 sons.
NASA astronaut Suni Williams is a mission specialist for Crew 9. This was her third visit to the International Space Station. She originally launched aboard Boeing's Starliner spacecraft and arrived at the space station on June 6th. Following the agency's decision to return Starliner uncrewed, she became an Expedition 71 and 72 crew member, where she logged 286 days in space on this mission. But Suni has a total of 608 days in space, the second most time in space by a U.S. astronaut.
5 minutes until predicted calm blackout. We'll see you on the other side at 21:51.
Talk to you soon.
And with that call out from the crew operations resource engineer to Commander Nick Hague, letting them know that everything is looking good ahead of the loss of signal period. We will see the crew on the other side of the loss of signal period at 2:51 p.m. Pacific time this afternoon. Continuing on about Suni Williams, who has a total of 608 days in space, the second most time in space by a U.S. astronaut. Former NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson actually ranks first for the U.S. with 675 days in space. Suni conducted 2 spacewalks and has completed 9 over the course of her career for a total of 62 hours, 6 minutes of spacewalking time. She ranks 4th on the list of cumulative time spacewalking by a female astronaut, and she has flown on 4 different spacecraft types, including the Space Shuttle, Soyuz, Starliner, and now Dragon. Previously, she served on Expedition 14 and 15 in 2006 and 2007, and again with Expedition 32 and 33 in 2012. She's a retired U.S. Navy captain and is a proud graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy and was the first astronaut to run a marathon in space.
Pretty awesome stuff. Now, NASA astronaut Butch Wilmore is also serving as a mission specialist today. This is his 3rd space flight and, just like Suni, logged 286 days in space. He conducted 1 spacewalk and completed 5 over the course of his career, earning him a total spacewalking time of 21 hours and 2 minutes. He's flown on 4 different spacecraft types throughout his career: the Space Shuttle, Soyuz, Starliner, and now Dragon. Previously, the Mount Juliet, Tennessee native served on STS-129 in 2009 and Expedition 41 and 42 from 2014 to 2015. Wilmore is also a retired captain in the U.S. Navy.
Next up is Alexander Gorbanov, who is the 3rd mission specialist serving on today's mission. Crew 9 was his first space flight to the space station, earning him a total of 171 days in space over the course of his career. Gorbanov, along with Nick Hague, saw the arrival of 4 visiting vehicles and saw the departure of 4 as well. The duo orbited the Earth more than 2,700 times since September. Before his cosmonaut selection in 2018, Gorbanov worked as an engineer for a rocket space corporation and helped support cargo spacecraft launches from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. So if you are just joining us, we are continuing to bring you live coverage of Crew 9's return to Earth following their mission aboard the International Space Station, where they completed science and research investigations. We are targeting splashdown off the coast of Florida at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time. The next major milestone that we'll look ahead towards is what we call loss of signal, or LOS, when we won't have communications with the crew because they will be re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. And during this process, there is plasma that builds up around that heat shield, so we are not able to communicate with the crew, but we are anticipating to regain communications with the crew at a short time from now at 2:51 p.m. Pacific time today.
As we said before, everything continues to look good for the return of the Crew 9 team. We are about to go into that period of loss of signal. Once we get views of the crew inside the capsule, once again, we will be sure to bring those to you. But that period of time is when plasma is building up on the exterior of the capsule, generating heat in excess of 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. So we are unable to communicate or command the spacecraft at that time. And that includes, unfortunately, video feeds as well. So as soon as we get the views back inside Dragon, we will bring those to you. But until then, we are going to stand by and continue to monitor the progress of Dragon. Like Sandra just said, we are anticipating the blackout period to begin at 2:51 p.m. Pacific time, 5:51 p.m. Eastern time. This will last for several minutes. It's not super exact, even though we are predicting acquisition of signal, or AOS, to come back at 5:51 p.m. Eastern time. In the past, we have regained communications sometimes a little bit earlier than that, so we'll probably start to hear Core begin to hail Crew Dragon a minute or two prior to that anticipated acquisition of signal. But right now, Nick, Suni, Butch, and Alexander are seated in their seats inside Dragon Freedom. Their visors are down, and they have put away or stored the tablets they had located on their upper leg to monitor Dragon's progress. Now they will be utilizing the touchscreen displays where the current operation and future operations will be displayed as they are able to monitor Dragon's progress continually. As I said before, Dragon is autonomous, meaning it is flying itself. So the crew stands by and monitors, and those touchscreen displays are what will be allowing them to do so and prepare for events such as parachute deploy.
And while on board the International Space Station, Nick, Suni, Butch, and Alexander contributed to over 900 hours of science and research investigations, which is really the key purpose of the International Space Station. Now, the International Space Station is celebrating a major milestone this year where they will be celebrating 25 years of continuous human presence in November. So if you're younger than 25 years, you've never known a day where there hasn't been a human living and working aboard the International Space Station, contributing to key science and research investigations that impact our lives here on Earth. There's research being done on Parkinson's, on osteoporosis, on cancer research, and a variety of other studies. Additionally, the microgravity laboratory provides a jumping off point for us as we venture back to the moon and onto Mars through longer duration space flights. One such example that the crew worked on during this mission was an alternative exercise device. In microgravity, the crew has to exercise for about 2 hours a day because they're not having the effects of gravity on their body. So to prevent bone and muscle loss, we counteract that with 2 hours of exercise per day. On board the International Space Station, they have 3 ways in which they can exercise. They have a bike, they have a treadmill, and they have a similar to a weightlifting machine that counteracts the microgravity environment. But a particular experiment that this crew tested out was a combination of all 3 of those in one smaller device, and this is really critical as we continue on to the moon, Mars, and beyond, because space is really important in spacecraft. So if we have something smaller that the crew might be able to utilize, that can potentially help us venture out even further into the solar system. So science is really the name of the game when it comes to the International Space Station. Some of the other science highlights that took place during this increment that are particularly interesting to me was we had the first wooden satellite that was deployed. This is a study to see if other materials might be more resourceful or renewable in space. So I'm really excited to see the results of that one as well. Additionally, we had a couple of spacewalks that took place to not only provide maintenance to the International Space Station, but also where we swabbed the outside of the space station near vents to see if any microbes that we all have microbes on us, to see if any of those could survive in the harsh environment of space, which again is very important for us to know and understand as we continue to the moon, Mars, and beyond.
Very exciting stuff. Now, at this point, we have now entered the communications blackout period for the Dragon spacecraft. This lasts approximately 7 minutes due to plasma formation around the spacecraft itself. During this time, no vehicle telemetry is received by mission control or the recovery team, and no external commanding of the vehicle or voice communication is possible. But as a reminder, Dragon is designed to fly itself. During re-entry, the vehicle will be slowing down from orbital velocity, which is approximately 17,500 miles per hour. The top temperature that Dragon will experience upon re-entry is 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. This blackout period, as I said before, we expect it to last about 7 minutes today, concluding at 5:51 p.m. Eastern Time or 2:51 p.m. Pacific Time. We right there have our first view of Dragon Freedom coming home to Earth.
And that view is from the WB-57, which is one of NASA's high-altitude planes that is tracking. Now, because of the way that this camera is configured, it does look like it is dark, but it is indeed daytime, and you're beginning to see that plasma trail as Dragon re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. All of that is expected. We are anticipating an acquisition of signal around 2:51 p.m. Pacific Time, so just minutes from now, and you may hear the core begin to hail out or call Dragon for communications and see if we can potentially get communications with them a little bit earlier. Following this, we'll have two events in rapid succession. We'll have the drogue parachutes deploy at 2:53 p.m. Pacific, followed by the mains just 1 minute later at 2:54 p.m. Pacific time, ahead of a splashdown at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida.
Pretty incredible views of the Dragon spacecraft making its way home back to planet Earth with the Crew 9 astronauts on board. Once again, this view is coming from the WB-57 plane. That heat shield we can see doing magnificent work as it works to...
Freedom, SpaceX, comm check.
All right, we're going to start hearing the SpaceX Crew Operations Resource Engineer.
SpaceX Freedom is with you. 4.16. Enjoying the ride.
Copy that, Freedom.
Great news there from Commander Nick Hague reporting back.
We see a healthy flight computer. Expect automated chute deployment.
Freedom copies.
Like we said before, things moving very quickly as Dragon Freedom makes its way home. Next event coming up will be deployment of the drogue parachutes. This occurs around 18,000 feet.
GPS has converged. Expect nominal altitude for drogue chute deployment.
We're about 2 minutes away from deployment of those drogue parachutes. Now the heat shield is continuing to work to slow the vehicle down. That entry period, the Dragon spacecraft went from orbital velocity about 17,500 miles per hour down to about 350 miles per hour. So it really gives you a sense of why that plasma builds up on the exterior of the capsule, thanks to the heat shield and the work that it does. Those drogue parachutes will slow it down from 350 to about 119 miles per hour. We can see
15 kilometers. Brace for drogue window.
We can see seat rotation happening inside the capsule. Great to get those first views of our crew members. Once again, the capsules are going about 350 miles per hour when the drogues are deployed. Those drogue parachutes that we manufacture here in-house are going to slow the spacecraft down to 119 miles per hour. And that is when we will see the main parachutes deploy, and that occurs about 6,000 feet above the ocean's surface.
And we are expecting drogue deployment at 2:53 p.m. Pacific, so we should see it any second now. And there you are getting a great view of Crew 9 inside Dragon Freedom as it returns back to Earth. We are awaiting the drogue deploys. This view coming from the WB-57 high-altitude plane. And there you see it on your screen, drogue deployment.
Drogue descent rate nominal.
You can hear the crowd here.
Visual on 2 healthy drogues.
The crowd here very excited as Dragon Freedom continues to make its way back to planet Earth.
Next up, we'll stand by for the main deployment of the parachutes. The mains are quite a bit larger. You'll be able to notice the difference on your screen once they deploy, and they continue to ensure that the Dragon spacecraft slows down even further. As we mentioned, Freedom will be traveling 16 miles per hour when it splashes down off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida, here at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time this afternoon. And there we go.
We have visual on 4 healthy mains.
That view was from inside.
Freedom copy.
That view was from inside one of the buckets where the parachutes are located. So we see a great view there of the reefing on those parachutes. And as those main parachutes begin to inflate fully, 4 beautiful, healthy mains. Now awaiting visuals of splashdown.
Freedom, 1,000.
We'll start to hear Commander Nick Hague.
Copy, 1,000.
As we heard right there, Commander Nick Hague will be calling out the altitude of the Dragon capsule from here on out. Landing in water is simpler and provides more margin against unlikely parachute issues. You can see those parachutes continuing to slow the Dragon capsule down.
And if you're just joining us, you're looking at
800 meters.
a live view of Crew 9, just minutes away from splashing down off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida. Splashdown 2 minutes from now at 2:57 p.m. Pacific. We do have 4 healthy mains really doing the job there. Just breathtaking views of a calm, glass-like ocean off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida. Crew 9 just minutes away from splashing down.
This is really such an incredible shot.
Copy, 600.
That was a live view from our recovery vessel, Megan, which is stationed a couple miles away from the splashdown site. We can see the crew there using their restraints as resting places for their arms. They were just in space moments ago, so their arms were able to float freely.
400 meters.
This is a gorgeous bluebird day here that we have for the splashdown of Crew 9. It's incredible to think that the Dragon capsule just minutes ago was going over 17,000 miles per hour and now gently coasting to a soft splashdown.
200.
Copy, 200 meters. Brace for splashdown.
As you can see there on your screen, continuing to monitor progress of the Dragon spacecraft. And we're going to stand by for splashdown located in the Gulf of America off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida.
And splashdown. Crew 9 back on Earth.
And SpaceX Freedom, splashdown. Good main release.
Copy, splashdown. We see main chutes cut. Nick, Alex, Butch, Suni, on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home.
It is an amazing, what a ride. I see a capsule full of grins ear to ear.
And as you can see on your screen, we have visual confirmation of splashdown. Dragon Freedom has returned home and NASA astronauts.
System safety verifications are in progress. We'll report back when recovery personnel are en route.
Understand. And, we're in section 2, 4.800 landing response. And looking for your words. And it's going to is necessary.
In the distance, we can see the recovery vessel making its way.
Copy, you're in section 2 for the environmental assessment in 4.800. That is not necessary today.
Understand. Raise and buzz.
So we will continue to have communications between the Corps and Nick Hague, the commander of Crew Dragon Freedom, which just splashed down 2 minutes ago off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida. Dragon Freedom has returned home with NASA astronauts Nick Hague, Suni Williams, Butch Wilmore, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbunoff. They're back on Earth after approximately 17 hours of a return journey from space. Florida, Dragon Freedom has returned home with NASA astronauts Nick Hague, Suni Williams, Butch Wilmore, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbunoff. They're back on Earth after approximately 17 hours of a return journey from space.
The SpaceX recovery ship and team have been waiting for Dragon's splashdown, and they will now make their way to the splashdown location. The teams have been ready and waiting about 3 nautical miles away, so it's going to take them about 30 minutes or so to make their way to
SpaceX Freedom. Pretty sure we're in stable 1.
Copy, stable 1. We see the same.
It's going to take about 30 minutes for the recovery team to make their way over to Nick, Suni, Butch, and Alexander, who are still seated and secured inside that Dragon spacecraft there on your screen. Incredible views there of that thermal protection system, or TPS. That Dragon capsule was pristine, white color before it departed the station, and we can see how the reentry phase, the thermal protection system did its job. Now, if you're wondering what that hole, that like bucket area is, that is underneath the side hatch. That is where.
Well, good evening to you. We begin with some breaking news. The wait is now over for 2 astronauts who spent 9 months at the International Space Station.
That's right. Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams splashed down in Florida just moments ago. And our Anthony Antoine has been following their arrival all afternoon, and we can't take our eyes off of just this landing and historical moment.
Yeah,
Anthony.
it's really remarkable when you watch this entire thing take place here today. What you're seeing right now is the recovery boats. They are on their way to try to, they'll be basically triaging Suni, Butch, but also there's 2 other astronauts on this capsule as well. We have Nick Hague and a Russian cosmonaut. So all 4 of them will essentially be triaged to make sure they're okay. And that process, we're told, is going to take about an hour here for this entire thing to take place. And then they'll be taken to another facility to where they'll be checked out, because obviously they spent over 286 days, I think it is, in space. So there's a lot can happen to your body in that time frame. So doctors want to make sure they're going to be A-okay before they can get back to their family. But what you're seeing here is just remarkable. I say that because as they're moving closer to this capsule to open it, this capsule, you can see the burn marks on the outside because this re-entry process is one that is very meticulous. In fact, there's a portion of this re-entry process where they lose complete contact between mission control and the astronauts on the capsule. It's about 7 minutes, and that's important because as they're re-entering, the sheer heat from the capsule, they said it was north of 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So that heat shield is very important to make sure it's a controlled climate on the inside for the astronauts, but on the outside, you can just see how that capsule, which was once white, you can see the burn marks on the outside. But it's been remarkable to watch this take place. It's about 17 hours from the ISS to splashdown here off the coast of Tallahassee in Florida. It is a beautiful day for this to take place. Weather can definitely be a very important factor in this and how this takes place. As a matter of fact, they had multiple possible locations for a splashdown, weather depending. So here we are in Florida right now. So we are happy to see our astronauts back. We're going to continue to follow this and try to see the first moments when they actually come out of the capsule. But again, this is live, taking place right now. Suni and Butch, they were only supposed to be there from 7 days, but that turned into a 9-10 month ordeal. But they have been very optimistic from the very beginning, and here we are, the moment of splashdown. So we're going to watch this for a little bit longer here, but earlier today, we did get a chance to speak with space historian Jordan Brim from the University of Chicago about what's next for these astronauts. Take a listen.
What happens afterwards is that they go into the expert medical care of NASA's space medicine experts. They get flown back to Houston. Within a day or two, they can start sleep sleeping at home, spending time with their family, and they continue to have, medical checkups for weeks and months afterwards because, space is hard on the body. The microgravity environment of the ISS leads to things like muscle atrophy, bone loss, vision changes, things that are well understood and that shouldn't pose a serious threat, but that do require some monitoring. Within a few months, they should return to normal astronaut duties. Now, Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams are veteran NASA astronauts. They have both been to space many times, so it's unclear whether or not they are going to continue to stay in the pool of active NASA astronauts or whether they may follow the lead of some of their other compatriots and leave for private sector jobs or maybe retire. Both of them have more than served this country with valor and bravery for their entire careers, going back to the Navy for both of them. So it's going to be interesting to see what Butch and Suni choose to do after this.
All right, let's get back to that live picture if we can, you guys. Here it is again. Those recovery boats are still out there. Our coverage of this will continue during our 6 o'clock newscast as well. And we're also going to bring you a news conference from the Johnson Space Center. That's going to be starting at 6:30. That's going to be our first time where we hear from officials to kind of walk us through start to finish about the process to get them back here. Again, that was a 17-hour trip from the ISS back here to Earth.
I think we were all a little bit nervous, just hoping that this mission would be completed safely. It looks like they're so close. I mean, we are in just like the final stretch here to get them out and back to planet Earth.
And it looks like the boat is getting closer and they're opening up the capsule there. And not sure how many layers there are. There's one person on the side and it looks like they will be in contact with those astronauts in just a few moments, which really is just so remarkable after more than 200 days. And now the flight to Earth, 17 hours, like Anthony has been saying, and you can see several boats in that area there, and one person on the capsule. They're trying to open it up now and see both of those astronauts finally return safely to Earth. Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder if we're getting, now, I don't know if you know this, Anthony.
Yeah.
Are we going to see them coming out of here?
We should. Yeah, so I believe what they're trying to do right now is essentially stabilize this as much as possible. And then they're going to be opening up the capsule there. And then the 4 astronauts will be coming out. And then they're going to be taken to, I believe that ship, you see the larger ship over there. That's where they're going to initially be then taken, because they're not going to use these speedboats to take them back to land to get their health checkups, at least started anyway. But they're going to, I believe they're going to take them to that larger vessel there on the water and then take them to get their first checkout. So this is the recovery team, as you can see there. We've got a couple of speedboats, and then we also have a larger vessel there. But this is just remarkable to see, you guys. You were watching this on the stream earlier today, just kind of watching this process play out. And that capsule they came back on, at some point it turns autonomous. So as they made re-entry back into the Earth's atmosphere, the capsule was basically driving itself. So to see where technology at this stage in the game has gotten us has been just incredible to witness.
And I think, like many people, not a lot of us have watched this whole process play out. We have the technology now and the video capability that we're getting a front row seat to it. And I'm just in disbelief to see how the parachute's deployed and how that came down. It's fascinating.
It really is. And we're taking different viewpoints of this happening right here. And we had a shot actually where it was closer from the water, but it looks like we have this black and white shot right now. Again, they were just trying to open up the capsule and 4 astronauts inside and trying to get them out so that they can go on one of those boats to receive the medical care that they need. And I just can't, can you imagine what you're thinking right now? I mean,
thank God.
Thank goodness. And I can't wait to get out.
I know. And it's a very cramped space. This capsule is, they're right next to each other. And 17 hours, your body is just feeling that the G-force as you're trying to re-enter space for 17 hours, the training, the expertise. Like, I can't speak highly enough of all the work that goes into this to make this all possible, because this is a team effort. Just hundreds of people have been working together to make this happen. We were looking at mission control earlier today, and just a room filled with dozens of people people behind these computers, just crunching the numbers, tracking the forecast. Meteorologists are there. They're tracking the trajectory of the capsule itself. They're tracking the water conditions on the water. If there are choppy conditions, like every single aspect of this has been really monitored extremely closely. I hope we get a chance to see the astronauts get out the capsule for the first time here, but this is a feed from NASA, so we can't control these cameras. We're kind of just at their mercy right now, but it is gracious of them to give us some insight into what's taking place at this very moment.
And I was looking at what some of the NASA reporters have been saying, and what the recovery team does initially is check for any signs of toxic propellant used by the thrusters, which could sicken the astronauts and the crews there. And what's going to happen, which is what we saw, a member of the recovery team in a black wetsuit, bright green helmet, climbing on the capsule, and they're trying to prepare it to lift it onto that recovery ship that you were talking about, Anthony, and then they will, I guess, get off on that recovery ship.
Mm-hmm. What a day this has been. Again, this was supposed to be a 7 to 10 day trip there for Butch and Suni that turned into 9 months, almost 10 months now. And, you know, I got to give Butch and Suni some credit. You know, I feel like the entire country has really fallen in love with them from the aspect of, like, they've been really gracious. You know, I can't imagine what I would be thinking. You mentally prepare yourself for like a week in space and it turns into this long, you know, so I got to give them credits, but they've been just really humble about it all. They are very experienced. They've been to space multiple times, and I think that actually showed, you know, how they they were taking questions and interviews, and they were just, you know, we're up here, we're serving our country, we're continuing the work, we're doing the research that's necessary, and until a crew comes out to space to relieve us, we're going to do what's required. And they did it. So it's
they
great.
went up there on a Boeing Starliner back in June, and it isn't until right now in March, about 9 months later, that they're able to touch down here back on planet Earth, and in a SpaceX spacecraft that they came down in that capsule. So it will be interesting, and we're anxiously awaiting to get our first look at Butch and Suni. Also, I would just love to know what it feels like going from zero gravity back to gravity. That has to just be a bizarre feeling, I would imagine.
And probably so many emotions finally getting back to Earth. There has to be some degree of uncertainty, but thank goodness everything is okay. And we do know that this is going to take some time. The recovery ship that actually pulls the capsule out of the water is going to take about half an hour. And what we're seeing and what we were seeing is the smaller boats that were inspecting the capsule and retrieving those parachutes there. So this is going to take several minutes before we, according to NASA reporters, see both of those astronauts. And I believe we have some audio from NASA Communications. I'm not sure if we can hear that, but it will give us a play-by-play on what's going on right now.
Thanks so much, Jaden. We did just have some communications letting us know that we'll have about a 5-minute period where we won't be able to hear from the crew. So please go ahead, tell us, how was the view from the recovery vessel?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was mentioning earlier, splashdown was nothing short of spectacular. And we were stationed about 1.5 nautical miles away from the splashdown zone and had great visuals here on the recovery vessel Megan. We actually saw a little of the smoke trail as the spacecraft was coming in. And then moments later, we spotted those drogue chutes, and this was quickly followed by 4 healthy white and orange main parachutes. We then tracked Dragon all the way down as it slowly propelled into the ocean. And I think I speak for all of us on the ship when I say a new core memory was made today, and we are looking forward to having Crew 9 on board with us a little later.
Jaden, that is amazing. Now, obviously, we are watching it here on camera, and the landing conditions look pretty good, but how was it from your perspective? What is the sea state out there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we've had optimal conditions for splashdown, and today it is sunny and 63 degrees outside right now with clear skies, light winds, and calm seas. The sea looks absolutely beautiful right now, and light blue with the sun reflecting from it. And Kay, I think the crew's going to like what they feel weather-wise on this picture-perfect day for splashdown off the coast of Tallahassee.
Thanks so much, Jaden. It certainly looks like a beautiful day. Can you tell us a little bit about the journey of the recovery forces to get to this point?
All right, again, what you're looking at right now is 9 months in the making as Crew Dragon, the capsule, landed here off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida, and you're witnessing the recovery efforts of Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, along with American astronaut Nick Hague and a Russian cosmonaut, all four of them splashing back down here at 4:57, and this is